To begin our journey down identity, let's take a quick look at Azure AD as a whole. And you might have seen this image before, which you can find at the link below, where Microsoft has a pretty good write-up on Azure AD fundamentals. But to begin with, Azure AD is really becoming the center of the identity world. You can kind of see it there in the middle of the picture. On the left-hand side, we have on-premises because people traditionally had Windows Server Active Directory, sometimes known as Active Directory domain services, on-premises, other directories and things that they may have historically used. A lot of those directories are on-premises, and now in the public cloud, SaaS-based world, we've got all these other solutions running out there, whether it's ServiceNow, Salesforce, etc. And, identity sprawl was just becoming a big problem. People had identities in their business, and then they had that same identity in another business. Take an example, when you onboard somebody from a customer and you create a new user for them, well, what if you could just trust the identity that they've already got and the authentication mechanisms that they're already using? And so Azure AD ultimately was a solution to that. How do we sync up with our identity on premises, as well as, enable collaboration from a consumer and a business perspective with identities, with other businesses that we deal with and consumers that we deal with. And at the heart of it also is three things: simple connection, self-service, and single sign-on. In fact, if we look at the Azure AD features in a little bit more detail, aside from being that enterprise identity solution, that single identity to keep, users and groups and everything all in sync across your enterprise, that's point number one. Adding single sign-on provides the ability to have single sign-on to apps and services. We don't have to go sign on again and again every time we want to access something. If there's applications we access, we've been given permissions to access them. We've already signed in when we logged in with our laptop, and maybe we use some kind of Face ID and other authentication on top of just a password. That's kind of there for you. And then we've got multi-factor authentication, as I was kind of just alluding to there. It's one thing to have a password. That's something I know. What about something that I have? Maybe that's a cell phone where I get the text message and I can key in that code. Maybe it's some biometrics, things like that. That just enhances security. So when we think of single sign-on and multi-factor, they're both great things because I've got multiple ways to authenticate, and then once I'm authenticated, I'm signed on, and now I can access all my apps and infrastructure services that I need. And finally, just that self-service empowerment to the users. Nothing more annoying than getting password reset calls day in, day out. We can empower users to do self-service password reset, but also empower them to, access the apps and the services they need. They can go to like a My Apps portal and request what they need. And so all of this comes together and is ultimately why Azure AD is so important, and particularly as it relates to Azure. You're using Azure AD potentially for Office 365 and other things already. When it comes to Azure, now we're able to use that same identity solution and give it permissions in the Azure world. And so you'll see in the upcoming demo, we'll create a new Azure AD tenant and then go from there, show you how to create users, groups, etc.